I want, I'm going to get! Whatever I want, I have to get!
Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. So yes, we've all heard about the Cassie and P. Diddy case, right? There's some new elements adding up to the case every day. But I'm not here to talk about what Cassie put in a lawsuit documents or what new allegations came out this time. I personally believe this to be true. But let's remind ourselves that he has not been judged yet, so it's all allegations so far, okay? But I'm gonna be honest, this case reminded me of the Dr. Dre case, R. Kelly, and it actually led me to think that there's a deeper issue here. So my question is, why do some black men abuse their power in the entertainment industry? I think it is important to remember the broader context of power dynamic, right? The thing with the entertainment industry and even the music industry is that there are limited resources and obviously limited opportunities. So whenever you have a field where the possibility of gaining entry is very difficult, in a lot of places subjective, that creates more of a climate for abuses of power. And where we also see a lot of vulnerabilities are fields that are traditionally dominated by men. So having few women at a work site can also increase the vulnerability for the women who are there. It's crazy how tight-knit these networks are, because if someone decides they don't vibe with you, it's not just about missing out on one job. They can pull some strings, make a phone call to their powerful pals who hold the key to other opportunities. And here you are, not just shut out from that one company, but your chances elsewhere take a hit too. It's all about who you know, and unfortunately, it can work against you real quick. Now, another good question would be, how does the power itself play a role in the psychological dynamic between two people working together, right? So with the sexual harassment, there can be two components. First off, there's the quid pro quo vibe, like a this for that deal. Basically, it's all about someone in power saying, you do me a solid, like go on a date or do some other stuff, and in return, they'll hook you up with a job, promotion, or whatever you're gunning for. Now, power is a real game changer here. Without that whole carrot and stick dynamic, they can't really throw their weight around. If it's the big boss making the moves, they got the say in whether you soar or cash, regardless of your skills. Plus, it throws this whole hush-hush vibe because you're left wondering who the heck to talk to. And that's when it becomes interesting to dive into the Cassie and P. Diddy case.
Baby, tell me if you like it.
I think y'all remember the song Me and You. The song was produced by Ryan Leslie. Everything started there because she was in a relationship with Ryan at the time, and she was 19 years old and she didn't know much about the industry yet. According to her, it was at that period that she met Diddy, who was 37 at the time. So he's the boss of Bad Boy Record. He has a crazy personal resume, but at the beginning there's no love relationship yet. He was like a father figure for her, bringing her to the shows, advising her. And still, according to her, he progressively takes more and more place, not because there was something going on between them, but because of his paternal figure he had towards her. So when he advised her to do something, she does it. So slowly but surely, they start to get closer, and she's even surprised that he's making advances to her. And it's always in a brutal way, right? So on her 21st birthday, he kisses her without her consent for the first time. So let's remember that he has a girlfriend at the time and she's taken too. So she's still in a relationship with Ryan Leslie, and Diddy will try his hardest to mess things up between her and her boyfriend, to the point where he would organize false events, according to her, where Ryan would not be allowed to come.
Was it love at first sight with your boyfriend?
It was a long time ago.
And she would hang out with him as a label producer, not yet as her boyfriend. He will introduce her to white powder. So remember that she views him as a protective figure at the time. And progressively, what's gonna end up happening is that she will break up with Ryan to start a relationship with Diddy, who is still the label's boss, and will make her dive into the flower world. And since she wants to look cool to him, she will do it. So according to her, it sounds as if he attracted her with his lifestyle. He had a very lavish lifestyle at the time and was always walking with cash. He would always want to pay for everything, and she would see him as a protection at the beginning, at least. So the whole package looked pretty irresistible at the beginning. He would pay for everything: hotel rooms, her apartment, her clothes, her shoes, everything. And something important to remember is that every time he would rent an apartment for her, it would always be close to his own apartments. Always. And every time they would be emotionally or sexually involved, it would always be with white powder in their blood. And at the beginning, there's still an element of protection. And at some point, he even asks her, "How do you call your grandpa?" And she answers, "Papa." And that's how she's gonna be calling him from then on. Which reminds us of someone. I think you know already who it is, right? Yeah, it's Young Miami. At the last VMAs, Young Miami was holding a sign that read "Go Papi," referring to Diddy. And to go back on Cassie, at this point, she's in a gilded prison. And I think that at this point, she starts to realize it. Okay, but the influence is already there. And this is only gonna be the beginning of her nightmare, allegedly, okay? With this whole power dynamic, the beating, the sex trafficking, the violence in the whole, right? But how did we get there? I think it's important to get back to the roots. Diddy's childhood.
Everything's good, baby. I'm here with you.
Yeah,
I love you.
love you too.
My baby.
She's getting a drip with me. She's hydrating.
I think you all saw this video resurfacing on the nets.
Mom Duke know how to have a good time. She ain't sitting in the house playing. They outside moving and shaking, baby.
Yeah, that's right.
She come with me to strip club. I don't care. Real. It's my dog. You know, I want to live life. We out here moving and grooving. So my mom told me, she just said, keep moving, baby.
That's right.
Keep moving. She
Don't stop.
She could touch the floor with her palms. You know,
Flat.
flat. Oh.
Nobody with normal common sense would watch this video without thinking there's something weird going on here between him and his mom, right? Maybe his mom molested him in the past, who knows? P. Diddy, whose real name is Sean Combs, was born on November 4th, 1969 in Harlem, New York. His father, Melvin, was murdered before Diddy even hit 4, so Diddy's mom, Janice, had to hustle. She was juggling 3 jobs, all to send her 2 kids to private Catholic schools. Though he knew little about how Melvin Combs died through his childhood, Diddy was able to put the pieces of the puzzle together rather easily.
I was raised by a single mother in Harlem. My dad, Mr. Melvin Combs, died when I was 3 years old. My mother always told me that he died in a car accident. But something about that, it just didn't feel right. Something was in my soul that was telling me otherwise. So as soon as I got here, I went to the library and I did some research. I used the microfilm at Founders to search through all the newspapers. And when I typed in my father's name and the day he died, I read in the Amsterdam News that he had been murdered and a drug deal going bad.
Yes, his father was a drug dealer. While Melvin's death was tragic, it unfortunately illustrated the reality in which Diddy grew up. Now let's remember, we're in the 70s. The unemployment rates exceeded 30%, plunging the neighborhood into crisis and poverty, making it one of the most disadvantaged areas in the United States. Many residents even chose to leave its streets, leaving behind scattered garbage, vacant lots, and abandoned buildings. Harlem had a notorious and dangerous reputation to the extent that it was advised against for a white person to take a stroll around there at that time. Melvin Combs' name was well known around that time, that was marked by the opioid epidemic that devastated New York's low-income communities. He was running in the same circles as people like Frank Lucas, who inspired the movie American Gangster.
There's definitely been times as I've gotten older that I've missed my father. Having somebody not to ask like manly advice. There was only two ways out of that, dead or in jail.
Okay, so let's resume. We have the father that left too soon, the mother that has to be the father too, the grandmother trying to be a mom to him. So he has no real male role model to educate him. We also don't know if he had been assayed in the past, most likely from a very close person of his family, maybe his mom, who knows. But imagine going through all of that as a child. It's a lot. But I'm gonna tell you what I think about it later. Let's talk about Dr. Dre. Surviving R. Kelly. In the history of surviving in the hip-hop world, it's important to know that when the R. Kelly affair is revived, he's not the only one. In fact, I'll talk about him in a little more detail later on. But it's really Kelly's team's big mistake because his team is very dismissive of the history because there's so many of them. And in reality, even the story of the famous documentary isn't new. Just a year before Surviving R. Kelly, we were treated to the first truly hip-hop surviving, which was called Surviving Compton and starred Suge Knight and Dr. Dre, based on the testimony of R&B singer Michelle. It all started from the same place. In 2015, Dr. Dre's Back, the movie about NWA Straight Outta Compton, comes out. He also releases his album. When he does his comeback and a lot of people go to see the movie, there's a problem. Firstly, there's a sort of anachronism in some of the musical facts, but that in itself isn't too serious. But above all, many women feel that Dr. Dre told the story as he wanted to tell it and left them out of the story. This gave rise to the controversy notably led by the singer Michelle. Michelle is an R&B singer from the late 80s and Dr. Dre's ex-girlfriend. She's mostly known from the show R&B Divas, which appeared 3 to 4 years before the famous film. And in this famous reality TV show, we discover the character who actually tells us her life, her career. And in the course of the reality TV show, she reveals that she was a woman beaten by Dre. The details are absolutely horrifying. She talks about how he broke her nose, he broke her teeth. I mean, she's beaten all the time. But what's most striking about this character, especially at the beginning, is that she has something very unique. She has a very like a little girl's voice, almost like a cartoon voice, which makes her sound so friendly that you just want to hug her when she talks.
I talk like this because I talk over my larynx. It's nothing wrong with me.
And I'm absolutely not saying that to make fun of her, let's make that clear. She's very self-deprecating and she tells that terrifying laugh of hers with Dr. Dre and then after that Suge Knight, because she actually does have a child with both, which is crazy. Except that when she testifies in 2012, it goes unnoticed. We're just happy to see him back on the music scene. Like, there's no undermining Dr. Dre. When Dr. Dre releases the film 2, he's in total confidence. But as soon as people see the movie, they go looking for Michele, who does several interviews saying that the film doesn't tell the story of her being beaten by him. That's when Dre, forced by Apple, first apologizes in a very vague way, saying that he's sorry for all the women he may have hurt in the past. This is during a film promo because it's a bit stainy to have this woman in the media explaining a pattern a bit similar to what we've seen just before with Diddy. Lots of crack rock, lots of cheating, lots of abuse, and lots of physical violence. She has to have several jobs done on her face, her teeth, her stomach, even when she's pregnant. So what she's saying is extremely violent, and since Dr. Dre has this deal with Apple, the Beats by Dre, it can hit home. Especially since, if you remember, that's when people wanted to call the Beats by Dre the Beats by Dre, like beat up by Dre. And she's not the only one. There's a hip-hop journalist called Dee Barnes, who was one of the first hip-hop journalists to have a show which she hosted on Fox at the time. She knew the members of the NWA pretty well, and in '91 there was a lot of friction between them, and she even thought they were going to end up killing each other. Ice Cube leaves the group and precisely conducts an interview on her show to explain his decision. The story unfolds, but a few weeks later, she will encounter Dr. Dre. So we are in '91 at a Hollywood party and Dr. Dre approaches her. She thinks he's just passing by. She believes he won't pay attention to her. She doesn't really give him much attention either, until he grabs her by the head and repeatedly slams it against the wall. But not once or twice, repeatedly. Everyone in the party is watching with fear. I think they even drag her down the stairs. So they're all shocked by this crazy scene, which the ex-manager of the group also spills in his book. She goes on different media outlets with this story. There's even an interview with Wendy where she spills that she bolted to the ladies' room afterwards because she was freaked out and Dr. Dre followed her.
Were you sexually assaulted? I'm not comfortable talking about everything right now. Your silence is speaking volumes.
So we're in 2015 here, and having these two women in the media is a big deal, especially because Dee Barnes was this well-known journalist who lost everything over this mess.
Dre had an interesting history of beating up women.
He definitely did.
Now let's rewind a bit and talk about Dre's childhood, because that stuff always adds an interesting layer. So Andre Romel Young, better known as Dr. Dre, was born on February 18, 1965 in Compton, a suburb of Los Angeles, California, which was a dangerous city at the time and still very much is today. But it hasn't always been like that. In the 1960s, Compton was doing great with a high median income and low unemployment. But then in '65, the Watts riots happened and things went haywire. White shop owners and middle-class black residents started leaving and the unemployment and crime rates went up. The Crips gang emerged in 1969 in South Central, followed by the Bloods in Compton. The only child of Theodore and Verna Young, Andre Romel had 7 half-siblings as a result of his mother's successive remarriages. Between 1976 and 1979, Andre's schooling was chaotic, with gang violence, school transfers, and poor grades. In 1981, he became the father of a little boy named Curtis. However, he didn't meet his son until 20 years later when Curtis embarked a career as a rapper known as Hood Surgeon. Despite a difficult childhood and an early life that saw him grow up too fast, he finds solace in music from a very young age. So if we resume, we have gang violence, no stability because of the mother getting married again and again, school transfers. It's a lot for a child. Now let's switch up to R. Kelly. Now when it comes to R. Kelly, we're only going to talk about his childhood because I feel like everybody already knows the story around him. So Let's go. Robert Sylvester Kelly was born in Chicago on January 8, 1967. He is the third child in a family of 4, but never knew his father. Growing up in extreme poverty in a housing project on the south side of Chicago with his mother, who was a singer without much success, R. Kelly discussed his painful childhood in an interview with GQ in 2016. In a book released in 2012, he revealed that he had been essayed in his childhood. And when asked about it in the interview, the artist said that he initially received a appalling proposition in exchange for money from a family friend. Then, around the age of 7 or 8, the nightmare returned. R. Kelly admitted to being abused weekly by a woman until he was about 15. As he grew older, he managed to break free from the grip of this woman. However, this period left some lasting effects on the artist. So to resume, there's a few things that are pretty much redundant. So we have the father that is absent most of the time, the child growing up in a very hard neighborhood. But it's hard for me to understand that as Black people, after everything we had to go through, we're still there to make our own people and people around us go through crazy traumatic stuff like that. It's unbelievable to me, but probably precisely because of those same things that traumatize a part of us, some end up reproducing those exact toxic traits they saw or underwent growing up. For those who went through something like that, please comment down below what you think about all these allegations. I actually had way more to talk about, for example, about Dr. Dre, his ex-wife, etc. But I just didn't want to make this video 2 hours long. So for those who know some more information, maybe comment them down below so that we can have a discussion. That's it for this video, guys. Let me know what your thoughts are. If you like this video, don't forget to click on the like button, subscribe please, it's very important. See you guys in the next video.